Hey, all right. Thanks for stopping by, Brian for Liberty. Today we're going to be talking about 3 reasons why libertarianism is incredibly important to the country right now. I look at what's going on and I look at how our politicians are acting and how they're behaving and how they're all trying to position themselves to take advantage of what's going on. And I can't help but think that we got to be in a place as a nation where, Joe Biden is the Democrat nominee who authored the 94 crime bill, who told black people that you ain't black if they don't vote for him. It's time to look outside of the two-party system. This two-party wall that's been built around the political process in this country has got to start getting torn down. If we can't do it now, because for Pete's sake, who thought we'd actually be in a position where in 2020 we'd actually be looking forward to the presidential campaign even less than we were in 2016? When I look what's going on with the far right in this country, I can't help but wonder, what in the world are you thinking? I don't understand. Why would the Second Amendment supporting right-wingers throw counter protests to Black Lives Matter? You're supposed to be small government liberty-loving people. And these people are literally protesting against government abuses. This is right in your wheelhouse. They are abusing I know I can understand that you may be upset that they are attacking police as far as, and I don't mean physically attacking, but that the Black Lives Matter movement seems to be primarily focused on police brutality. I can understand that you may be upset that the Black Lives Matter movement is focused primarily on African Americans. I get that. I'm not happy about that either. Personally, I think they should be forming a broader coalition, particularly when it comes to police brutality and talking about all police brutality, not just the stuff that happens to the black community. But from a historical perspective, you've at least got to be able to understand why they focus on the government oppression of blacks. But at the end of the day, if you're Constitution supporting, Bill of Rights loving, free speech supporting, liberty loving people, how could you oppose what they're doing? Well, this scene is mind boggling to me. I don't understand what's going on here. I don't understand why they are not shouting out words of encouragement, why they're not applauding. These Black Lives Matter protesters are peacefully protesting government oppression, and it looks like these other folks are literally trying to intimidate them instead of encouraging them to take up the battle, to take up the cause of liberty and pushing back against an oppressive government. You should all be on the same side, and I don't understand why you're not. To me, these are the folks who have the "Don't Tread on Me" stickers on one side of their bumper and the thin blue line on the other side of their bumper sticker, and will go to their graves never understanding the irony. On the other side of all this is the left's dogmatic obsession with political correctness and cancel culture. This has wiped out the livelihoods of several people. This has eliminated so much from our cultural past. HBO just took down Gone with the Wind. I know that they're saying they're going to put it back up, and I respect them wanting to put it up there with some historical perspective. Every day it seems like we're getting a new news story about an actor or a politician or somebody who has to apologize for something they said 10 years ago because some social justice warrior in his basement didn't have anything better to do but to scroll 10 years back in somebody's Twitter account and find something negative and put it out there so that these people have to apologize. We're taking things out of historical context. We're taking statements out of context, and we're pushing this agenda of we're literally crushing free speech. And the justification for it is, well, these are private enterprises. If they don't want you to say this thing on their platform, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, this is how people are getting the word out. This is how people are communicating nowadays. And if we're going to allow the far left cancel culture, social justice warrior to control the message, then you're only going to get one message. Because I think we all agree that the mainstream media has proven itself incredibly unreliable in delivering unbiased information to the public. More importantly, we don't have the First Amendment, as Ron Paul said, to talk about the weather. In this country, you are supposed to hear offensive things. You're supposed to hear things that make you uncomfortable. And you're supposed to be engaged in conversations meant to enlighten and further your view. And to do that, you're going to hear things you don't necessarily want to hear and things that you don't necessarily want to agree with. If we are not doing that in this country, if we've decided that you're not allowed to be offended or that you are not allowed to offend, then we have fundamentally decided we don't want a First Amendment in this country anymore, and that is terrifying. Okay, number two, both parties being authoritarian plays directly into the hands of the status quo. If you are incredibly wealthy, if you are behind the scenes and you're an incredibly wealthy person, you're a multi-billion-dollar international corporation, you're a giant billionaire like Soros or the Koch brothers or any of these mystery donors where all these different money is coming into these political parties, the last thing you want is for things to change because the status quo has worked very well for you. Which political party wants to decriminalize drugs? In my opinion, the criminalization of drugs is a racket that protects drug cartels and pharmaceutical companies. It does nothing but lead to the mass incarceration of African Americans in this country and soon to be white America. I've been pounding on this message for a while that a totalitarian government is going to strike the most vulnerable first, but the rest of the society is coming. And if you look at what's happening in rural communities with the methamphetamine issues and the opioid addiction issues, the rest of the country is coming. We've got to start pushing back against this, and the authoritarian regimes of the Republican and Democrat Party are not going to get us there. There are certainly some small steps being taken with the end the Qualified Immunity Act, with the desire to end no-knock warrants. But here's what I'm not seeing. I'm not seeing laws being taken off the books. So what we're doing is we're going to start pushing the police back, and we're going to start reducing what the police are and are not allowed to do in our communities, but we're not going to change the law. And if we have any historical perspective at all, we can look back and say, here's why we increased the police force. The war on drugs made drugs incredibly expensive, which created this massive incentive for people to go out and deal drugs, which, of course, affected the most vulnerable members of the community first, which was, at that point, the black community having just been given equal rights, which led to the mass incarceration of blacks, which led to all this violence, which said, hey, we need more police on the street. So now we're going to go the other direction. We're going to defund the police. We're going to shrink the police force. We're going to take powers away from them. Violent crime will increase because we haven't changed any laws, and we're going to be right back in this cycle again. And the reason for that is our two authoritarian parties that we have allowed to run this country don't want to solve actual problems because that's hard, and you don't win elections that way. And winning elections and staying in power is absolutely the most important thing to them. And lastly, and I think maybe most importantly, is that both parties are using race to pander to their bases, which does nothing but divide the American population. And at the end of the day, we are losing the ability to sit down and have conversations with each other. We're losing the ability to hear our opposition. We're losing our ability to take in information and even allow it to change our minds, or at least have empathy for people who disagree with us. We're losing that ability as a country. And the fact that there are only two voices is the reason why. And a third voice can be a bridge from one side to the other. We need to start pushing the old guard out. We need to stop voting for the same two voices over and over again. We need to hear a third voice in this conversation so that we can regain some empathy and regain the ability to listen to each other. We need to learn to trust each other more than we trust government. We need to understand that government isn't necessarily here to solve our problems, but to make us dependent on them. And we need to move forward and reach out and take care of ourselves and our neighbors and stop relying on government to do it for us. These are things that the Libertarian Party has always stood for, and I'm confident these are things that Libertarians, once elected to office, will always push for. So those are the three reasons why Libertarianism, I think right now, at this critical juncture in our country, is incredibly important. And I know what you're going to hear is that this election is too important to vote for a third party. And we need to pivot that way of thinking from this election is too important to vote for a third party to this election is so important we have to vote for a third party. And I'm looking to get a video out on Thursday where I talk a little bit about the Rayshard Brooks shooting, the terrible tragedy there. And is there a way that we can avoid this, and things that we should be looking at from our police department and how we're policing that maybe could stop preventing some of these senseless deaths. So that's coming on Thursday. I'm also starting Thomas Sowell's Basic Economics. Shamefully, it is my first time reading this one. And on Sundays, I'm going to be talking about the section of that book that I've read, giving it some reviews and trying to apply the knowledge I'm gaining from that book to modern economic issues that we're having. So that's what's going to keep be coming. So please subscribe and turn on the notifications so you don't miss when those videos hit. And as always, I will see you guys next time.